Welcome. Welcome to our International Coaching Week 2020 webinar. We are with the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, and we are so excited to invite you into our space today. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom live, go ahead and test out our chat box. Let us know that you can hear us, and we love hearing where you're tuning in from. So share with us where you're tuning in from, and bonus points, share with us someone who you're grateful for right now. And panelists, I'm going to be asking you that too, so be thinking about who you're grateful for. And if you're joining us on Facebook, welcome to our space today. Same thing, you can use the comments in the Facebook video feed. Go ahead and let us know where you're tuning in from and who's someone that you're grateful for right now. In a time where things can feel uncertain, it's really, really nice to be able to come back to some just genuine gratitude for people in our lives. We will just give everyone a moment to finish coming into the room. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I just want to say that typically our monthly webinars are for our community of iPEC coaches, but since this is such a special week, International Coaching Week 2020, we are really excited about this really relevant topic for everyone. We're so excited to be joined by those of you who aren't yet in our coach community and to be able to bring this awesome discussion to you today. My name is Jenny Wiley. I am Director of Community for the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And today I am grateful for my husband. He is taking care of our kids and doing all of the household work right now. And so super grateful that I have him in my life to help me out right now. Thank you all so much for sharing where you're tuning in from. I love the shout outs to the moms. Mother's Day in the US is coming up this weekend. Awesome. It looks like everyone's here. So let's go ahead and introduce our panelists today. I'm going to give a quick intro and then we'll check in with them and see who they're grateful for too before we get started. We're going to start with Cindy Gardner. Cindy is passionate about developing human potential and raising consciousness. She started her coaching business at the time of the 2008 recession and has guided thousands of people on a transformational journey to discover their infinite, unlimited potential through her work as an iPEC lead trainer. She speaks, trains, and coaches extensively on leadership, mindfulness, self-awareness, vulnerability, empathy, purpose, and the power of choice. Cindy, welcome. So grateful that you're here today. Who's someone who you're grateful for right now?
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for that introduction. And I want to say thank you for the shout outs that are going on in the chat board right now.
You've got a fan club.
I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful for that. And it may sound a bit cliche, but it's really quite genuine. And it's really being grateful for all the frontline workers during this time that we're all living in. And, obviously their contributions to humanity can't be underestimated at this time. But if I was to hone in even more specifically, I'm most grateful for the guy from Aldi who delivered my groceries this morning.
Important work.
Much gratitude for that guy.
Absolutely. I can feel that for sure. Thank you, Cindy. All right. Next up on our awesome panel today is Jeff St. Laurent. Jeff launched a full-time coaching business after graduating from iPEC in 2004. A decade into his coaching, he realized that the challenges other coaches were facing in building their own business, and he decided to take his 10 years of coaching experience and become a mentor, helping coaches transition their coaching practice into a full-time business. Jeff is such an incredible resource in our iPEC community, and thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your wisdom with us, Jeff. Yeah, absolutely. So, and who is someone who you're grateful for right now?
Yeah, thanks. It's awesome being here. And I'll take echoing what Cindy was saying, but start specific in saying my girlfriend, who is a nurse, and which leads me to, the frontline workers and, she's worked in the COVID unit specifically. And, she's like, I got the text that one morning and it's just like, they sent me to the COVID unit today. And I was like, oh, okay. And just coming home and hearing the stories and like the real front line of, you can only be there to see really what's going on and how bad it is, so it just gave me a newfound respect for, being respectful to others and, wearing masks and things like that, and just what they go through. And it's, you think about having to do that and spend 12 hours in that space and then go back the next day and the next day. It's wild to think about. So yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Grateful.
Thank you for your perspective, Jeff. And thanks to your girlfriend also. All right, awesome. And finally on our panel today, we have Luke Iorio. In addition to his role as president of iPEC, Luke is also a consciousness and mindfulness coach. He graduated from iPEC in 2005 and for almost a decade led iPEC to accelerated growth from 5 to 18 locations at the time, expanding international operations and taking the company from 1 business to 5 businesses with a total of 11,000 graduates in 44 countries at the time. So currently he helps guide the vision, strategy, and culture for the company, as well as keeps us focused on our mission for conscious change. Luke, I always love sharing these spaces with you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And
very happy to be here, especially with this crew.
Yes, awesome. And who is one person that you're grateful for right now?
Well, there's one person in particular, I'll mention her in a second, but to echo just what it's been said about our frontline workers, knowing quite a few people that work inside of healthcare right now, in a variety of realms, Jeff, what you shared, I think is really important because what they're experiencing and what they're going through, and the very fact that just day after day, they just keep going back. So we all owe them an extraordinary debt of gratitude for what they're doing all the way around the world right now.
Absolutely.
For me specifically, it's easy. It's my wife. None of this works. Everything that's going on right now doesn't happen if it was not for my wife and what she's doing in taking care of our house, taking care of our kids. She's trained in education, but teaching your own kids, totally different ballpark.
Yeah.
And she's doing it with a smile, and the kids are still smiling. I'm still smiling. So she must be rocking it.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much again for joining us here today, whether you're here on camera with me or in the audience or even watching the replay. We have a really awesome discussion planned today around, as helpers, as coaches, what it means for us to not only be certified, but to go pro, so to speak, in becoming and serving as a paid certified professional coach, especially during these times where things can feel uncertain and that you are working within some limits that might not have been there before. So our questions are going to be centered around that today with our panelists. If anyone who's joining us live wants to add to the conversation, feel free to use the chat box, or you can use the Facebook comments, and we'll be passing along any questions here in our Zoom room. If you are in our Zoom room, go ahead and use the Q&A box, and we will be forwarding any questions along to our panelists as we go along. All right, so let's just start things out. I remember, Jeff, when I first had this idea to present some kind of panel discussion around the concept of going pro. It was so exciting because you were actually thinking of a very similar thing for yourself with your business. And so I'd love to start out with all of us, but Jeff, let's start with you. What does going pro as a coach mean to you in your practice?
It's really coming from a place of recognizing that you're a professional. Like if you think of the word, right, you're a professional. And when you're professional at something, you're not only good at it, articulate at it, mastering it, or working towards the mastery of it, but most importantly, professionals get paid to do what they love, what they're good at, what they're working at mastering. And that's the major distinction, I would say personally, is you get paid. Like when I was a fitness professional, I went from, being in fitness and liking working out and nutrition and health, but then I was getting paid to teach it and to train and to help people along the way. When I went to iPEC, I wasn't a professional yet, right? I started learning and I loved coaching, and then I coached for free. But then when I started getting paid for it, I became a professional.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a big piece, is recognizing that we want to make that leap or take that leap towards that, getting paid for the value that we bring to the market.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Cindy, what do you think going pro means to you as a coach?
Yeah, I love what Jeff just said, and I echo all of those things. And to add to that, it's it's a full-time pursuit for me. It's not a hobby. It's not, well, sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. I am all in on this as my career. It's my purpose. It's my passion. And in fact, passion is what fuels the tank. It's what drives me. It's what has me show up every day, energized and engaged, and in a space of what will I create today? What are all the possibilities and opportunities before me today? So it's not something I dabble in. Again, it's not a hobby. And I think, the point that Jeff makes about getting paid for it can be a little tricky in a service business. And if you think about it, like, a plumber gets hired to, stop a leak in your pipe. It's like, oh, okay, my pipe's no longer leaking. I'm going to pay the guy for that. Or an accountant who does my taxes. Oh, I have my tax returns. I'm going to pay the guy. It's like, it's a no-brainer. And because in this service-oriented business, it can be sometimes perhaps we might perceive it as tricky to see what the value is. We can get a little bit tripped up in, is it valuable? Should I get paid for this? I don't know. So that may be something we get further into in this discussion today, but it's absolutely true what Jeff said. Part of going pro is being paid and recognizing your value as a coach. You'll never get paid what you're worth because what you bring is invaluable, incredibly invaluable. So definitely just something that is, I want to say a hot pursuit. That sounds very strange though, but it's something that is, I'm all in, and it is completely tied to my purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that, Cindy. Thank you. Luke, I'd love for you to weigh in, and then also, not everyone is an entrepreneur as a coach. And so some of us are coaches within the work that we already do or in our businesses. And so I'd be curious to have your perspective on what it means to call yourself a professional coach, even if you're not an entrepreneur, but if you're a professional.
Yeah, I think so a couple things. One is if you look even behind what Jeff and Cindy just laid out so well, is the energy we're talking about there is the seriousness with which you take the profession that you happen to be in. I love the phrase Cindy used, all in. So whether you are as an entrepreneur, whether you're using it as a professional to advance your career, whether that be as an executive, as a leader, manager, HR, OD, whatever, you take what you do with a certain level of seriousness and you go all in. You put a lot more focus in it. You put a lot more passion and purpose into what you're doing. I think one of the other ways that I would also look at this is we're talking about it from, yes, obviously the professional, the business side of what we're doing, whether it's in your own practice or as your career. And you've got to look at this from the personal side as well, because when you go pro, there is also a seriousness that you need to approach your own personal practice, meaning you've got to eat your own cooking. So if you're going to be a coach, you'd better have a very deep personal practice. You better, take a look at where might you need continued coaching, not just the skills, but where are you going to continue to push yourself in your development in all of these different ways. And I think when you combine those two, but especially from the personal side and expanding your own consciousness from that regard, what you start to see is that those intangibles that, sometimes we might not be able to articulate quite as well to other individuals when they're looking to hire us as a coach or when they're looking to engage with us inside of our organization, you're going to start to not only articulate them, but you're going to have a certain energy and understanding of what it's like to grow through these means. And so if you take it that seriously, and if you are consistently eating your own cooking in this regard, you've got just this ability as well as this energy and confidence for what it is that you represent. And I think that's one of the things that at times when we go into a new business or we take on a new career path, we get consumed by we've got to go get the next client. We've got to build our coaching packages. We've got to do all these business things. But the thing that can't suffer is your own personal practice, because the more that you lean into that, the easier the other stuff does because of the confidence you have in what it is that you're representing.
Yeah, beautiful. I always appreciate that reminder too. Taking care of ourselves is one of the most important and critical things about being a coach, and to be able to have that confidence and tap into it. If you're joining us live, go ahead and share in the comments or in the chat box, what does going pro mean to you as a coach? And if you are not yet a coach, what might be holding you back from feeling like you can go pro? I'd love to see some reflections on that, and maybe we might be able to incorporate them into our conversation today. So let's back up a little bit. I love to say, as director of community, that all of us as coaches have our origin story. And there's a lot of little nuggets and insights that can come from understanding where we came from before we decided to transition into full-time or whatever iteration of coaching we're doing. So I would love for each of us to reflect on, before we became a certified coach, what were you experiencing in your life? What were you noticing? What were the things that were calling you to this purpose of being a professional coach? Cindy, would you like to go first?
I would, sure, thanks. So at the time, I was very much into a marketing career. I did a lot of growing up in corporate America, very much in the corporate space, in the sales and marketing capacity. And I was about this much fulfilled doing it. Okay, if you want to quantify that in some way, right? About that much fulfilled doing it. And over the years, I probably spent about 16 years in that space, and I just felt a calling into something deeper, is the best way I know how to describe it. And I had heard about this thing called coaching. I wasn't really sure what it was. I actually thought I'd go back to school to become a therapist because I just had a desire to work very deeply one-on-one with people. But this thing called coaching kept pinging me, and the time was 2007. And it was probably about the fifth time it crossed my path where I told myself, maybe you want to pay attention to these signs you're getting and take a look at this. And so I did, and I did my research and found my way to iPEC to become a coach. And quite frankly, when I enrolled in the training, I wasn't even sure what I was going to do with it. I just knew that I wanted to add something more to my training, and something that was going to take me deeper into the world of human potential. That's where I felt my calling. And so probably got through my first weekend when I knew that I was in the right place with my people, my tribe of people. And so I went on this 8-month journey, and when I came out on the other side of it, it was just so clear to me that I was meant to serve the world as a coach, that it was time to put marketing to the side and really jump into this space. So by the time I finished the program, it was 2008. So a lot was going on in 2008. The wheels were falling off the economic wagon. And it was probably, a lot of people would say it was probably the worst time to be starting a business. So again, at that time, just to give more of that context, is I was just really feeling pretty unfulfilled in my profession. And I just knew there was something more. And it would have been easy in some respects to just stay where I was and keep doing what I was doing in that corporate space. But I knew that I'd be selling out on myself because I just knew there was more for me. So as I came to the end of my coach training journey, there was really no question for me that I would go on to create my business and to become a coach. And friends and family around me said, "Are you nuts in this day and time? You're going to start your own business when people are getting laid off left and right, getting pink slips and wondering how they're going to survive. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" And I said, "Well, not really, from the standpoint that I've never started a business before. And even the word entrepreneur is tricky to spell. And I was an English major and it was kind of tricky." But I really felt like at a very deep level, not up here, but at a very deep level, like at a soul level, that this was my calling and that this was what I was meant to do. And so I knew going in that I had been trained by the best coach training school the industry has to offer, bar none, and that I was well equipped. So I had my skill set in hand. I also had something equally as important, and that was my passion to serve. And so where do I start? What do I do? Where do I dig in? I had all of those questions. And the funny thing is, if you asked me if I was afraid, I would tell you I wasn't afraid. And I can't even tell you why, right? I can't even tell you why. But if I were to make sense of why, as I think about it now, it's because I was passionate about doing it. I felt that calling, and nothing was going to get in my way of doing it. And so I was living down in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and just put myself out there in a way that, I often describe it as having become unrecognizable to myself, because I was a pretty shy and quiet person. And to think that I was going to go out there to put myself out there so people could find me. By the way, you have to put yourself out there so people can find you. That was a little scary, and doing speaking engagements and those kinds of things was, okay, at times it was terrifying, if I'm being honest. And, the thing is, and I've told this story many, many times over, and I'm sure I will continue to tell it until the end of time, is that I went to iPEC to learn how to become a coach. And becoming a coach and learning the skill set was really just the cherry on top. What I didn't see coming was, and it was just the greatest gift, and I never, ever, ever saw it coming, was the way I would get to know myself in the process, and to remove all the stuff that wasn't me so I could get to the heart of who I am. And in doing that, that's what enabled me to get out there. I'm not going to tell you that there weren't days when I wasn't like, how's this going to go and where am I going to go with this? Of course, that happened. But again, passion was the fuel in my tank. Passion continues to be the fuel in my tank. And focus is really important. There are things that will dangle all around you to, do this, do that, do this, do that, to skyrocket your revenues to the heavens. But focus is so important. You pick 2 or 3 things and you go with it. And just another piece I want to drop in here is that, as somebody who is pretty shy and quiet, I think it's an important piece of the story, because maybe others can see something in it for themselves, that by my 2nd year in business, I was nominated as Small Businesswoman of the Year. And if you told me that could have been me, I would have said, you've lost your mind, not me. But that's just the power of having the skills behind you and having the passion. It is a 1-2 combination that, I'll just say it's been an amazing, amazing ride, continues to be.
Yeah, it's beautiful to be able to reflect back on that with you. Yeah, and I echo, I'm seeing a lot of comments. Your story is so inspiring, and the parallels that we now can draw between what was going on with your experience, those of us who are feeling called now to serve more as coaches during a time that is very uncertain, similarly to what you were experiencing in 2008, just the lessons abound. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Jeff, what was going on for you pre-certification that made you be ready to take this leap?
Yeah, I was in the fitness industry. I had my own personal training business within a health club. I was a national trainer for a company, traveling around, and loved it, loved every aspect of it. And had an opportunity to work for Nike, the world headquarters out in Beaverton, Oregon. So moved across country. I was in Massachusetts, where I'm at now, but moved across country, worked for them for a year, came back home. And obviously, in that move, I gave up, all my clients and things like that, came back home, naturally fell back into, let's start training again, And so started working with some people after I hadn't worked with them for, just over a year. And it was like, there was one day I'm sitting there and I'm doing the same thing with the same person who since has then, lost all their results. And it was like deja vu, but I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? There's no future. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to help them get in better shape or whatever, but then I'm going to stop. There was a realization that I had a shelf life as a fitness professional. And so where am I going with this? And so when I stop, are they just going to gain weight again and get it out of shape? And it's like, so there's no future value, I felt, to what I was doing. And I felt like I wanted to be able to help people in a different way that didn't require me to be there. So in other words, obviously there's the work we do. After the work's done, did we teach them something? Did they learn something that they can carry forward and then reciprocate that into other people's lives and become, in that role model? And so that's where I'm just doing a lot of personal development, and I came across this thing called coaching. And, as a fitness professional and a coach in that world, in the athletic world, et cetera, I was like, whatever. It sounded interesting, but it was on a whim. I really didn't know what it was, but it sounded good. So I went into it with zero expectations, met this guy called Bruce, and, wow, what is this?
For those who don't know, Bruce D. Schneider is the founder of iPEC.
Yes. And then it was like, come out of there. And it was like something happened in that experience that every single person here knows what that iPEC magic is. Something happened and I just started coaching people. And it was never even like a second thought for me. Like I just saw this as a vehicle for me. I didn't know where I'd go, what I would do is similar, maybe what Cindy was saying. And it was not, I never looked back. Like it was done. Like, and I still did a few things in the fitness industry. I still had a training position where I was like filming and stuff. And it was fun, but it wasn't like my thing anymore. Coaching was my thing. I was a coach. And I just coupled off of everything that I'd done in the fitness industry, didn't have a niche, didn't, any of the stuff that I teach now. Like I only tell with people, like, I didn't know any of that stuff. And you don't need to know any of that stuff. Like it's great to have, you don't need any of it. You just need to have a passion and a vision and be willing enough to speak your voice. And I did that. And here I am, on my 16th year and as my primary income and coming full circle back, after 10, 12 years doing stuff with iPEC. And now it's incredible.
Yeah, amazing. I love hearing Cindy and Jeff, you sharing the tension and the restriction that you were feeling before your certification. Jeff, you mentioned this kind of Groundhog Day effect that you were noticing, like this is not creating sustainable results. What is going to like really create lasting change in these people's lives? And Cindy, you talking about how it's just meh kind of feeling. I can imagine that a lot of us who have our coaching journey stories have similar experiences where we knew that there was something more. We knew that there was something beyond that we could extend beyond ourselves. Luke, share with us your personal coaching story, and then we'll get into the more of the what happened with iPEC at the time.
Sure. I'm just enjoying and being inspired here with Cindy and Jeff. I absolutely love your stories. Even though I've heard some of them before, I still love hearing it. For myself, I guess maybe two different sides of this. On the one side, I came in a very different fashion than others. I was a consultant, small business consultant, marketing and management. And it was actually, I literally got, kind of tapped on the shoulder, so to speak, digitally anyway, from Bruce Schneider, our founder, and one of his partners at the time. Going back, this was originally in 2004 when we connected, and I came in to work with the organization, to consult with the organization. But there was something that in particular that really just kind of leaped off the page at me in terms of what coaching was. So you actually rephrased this a second ago, Jenny, is that in the consulting work I was doing with entrepreneurs, I was getting really frustrated by some that would have just no results whatsoever, or they'd get some results out of something and they'd go right back to where they were. They'd get results again, they'd go right back, this constant reversion. And others who were just incredibly successful, they would take a plan, they'd take what we worked up, and they would just run with it. And it was incredible. So I became very curious around what was it that could create sustainable results. And more that I started to research into this, and this is when it then coincided with finding coaching, was that I was beginning to recognize that any of the results they were achieving had basically nothing to do with the businesses themselves and everything to do with the core individual or individual team members that were at the heart of that business. And that's when I found coaching. And I found it as a very, very different model for people to be able to tap into what really are some of the innate strengths and innate potential that they have and translate that into performance, regardless of the context, regardless of the business that they happen to be in. And so I became very, very fascinated in that. The next thing that I found, which was on more of the personal side as well for myself, was recognizing that to get to any of those types of results, it was an inside job, right? Meaning that everything that is our foundation begins within. It begins by looking at our belief systems and becoming much more self-aware, looking at our values, understanding the whys and wherefores of how we go about making decisions or viewing the world. Because if we can get that inner side of us, that inner world in balance and to connect to a sense of peace and alignment with who we really are, things just start to flow out of that. Our confidence grows. It spills over into the way that we make decisions, the way we relate to people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I started to tap into when I got into the field of coaching and went through the iPEC program back in 2005, is I saw the way that inner transformation took place and how that then just took hold in whatever the external environment happened to be for the person who was benefiting from the coaching. For myself, I saw it both in my professional life and what I was doing in business, but I saw it in my home life. I saw it with the way that I'd relate to my family and to my friends. And that was just so personally enriching. And that then spills over to the professional relationship. So it just has this incredibly holistic benefit to it. So anyway, I mean, I like I said, I came in through a very, very different route. And at the same time, it fundamentally, I would never be able to even go back and consider consulting, leading, managing, relating, communicating in any other way than the way that we've learned how to do that as coaches, and specifically on a conscious coaching model.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing about all these seeds that were planted that have blossomed into such incredible, strong trees now. I'm envisioning each of you as like a really big, amazing tree now that has branches that just extend forever. I'm curious, we have had some awesome questions come through, and let's tap into more of that energy that the three of you were experiencing in 2008 in your various roles. And one of the questions that came up was, how did you keep the faith that you were going to be able to succeed and expand and develop in your coaching practice and as a professional? What really fueled you to keep moving forward and maybe, move past any doubts that you were experiencing when externally there was a lot going on that may have told you otherwise? Luke, let's start with you. And you were actually with iPEC at the time. What was going on with the business?
I was with iPEC at the time, and that's when I was very gracefully said, "Hey, how about you be CEO?" Sorry, that's literally how it. That was in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
But to the core of your question, I think the thing that provided the trust and the faith first was doing the inner work, eating your own cooking, as I said before, meaning that coaching so fundamentally addresses one of the single greatest fears that underlies everything that's going on out there right now, as was going on in the end of 2008 and beginning of 2009, which is uncertainty. We have a massive challenge as human beings of grappling with uncertainty, that our brains immediately perceive that as threat. And we go into survival mode in any number of different forms of stress response of what that survival mode can look like. Coaching is designed to help people grapple with that uncertainty based off of the certainty of your self-awareness and based off of having certainty in who you are. And so having gone through that, having experienced that, and having made that a part of my practice, I've always worked with coaches. I've had a meditation practice for, 14, 15 years now. It's always been something that I have looked for in my own development. So when it came to having the faith that what we were going through at that time in 2008 and 2009 was something that we would not only survive, but that we were actually going to thrive and grow through, which we did, and the entirety of the industry, not just iPEC as a school, but our coach community and coaching as a whole as an industry boomed from 2009 forward because of exactly this. It helps people address uncertainty. It helps people grapple with, how do I successfully navigate change? How is it that I create sustainable change? And where does that reside? It resides from that inner peace, inner balance, inner confidence that I can develop. And so when you tie all those things together, all of a sudden it was, again, speaking from experience. When you've connected and you've dove in to that degree, it just flows out of you. As you can tell, I have no energy for this whatsoever. And so that was then just on a very, very practical side. And this was as a business, but this is true for coaches as well. We focused on the absolute number one thing that we knew we did well. So we were actually starting to look at diversifying inside of iPEC, which we did many years later. But we said, the thing that we do well is coach training and certification. The way that we do that well is by these types of connections and relationships and doing these types of workshops. So we leaned in and doubled down over and over and over again on the greatest strengths that we had. So if your strength is in speaking, speak. If it's in networking, network. If it's in social media and building communication that way, do it. If it's about building community, do it. Whatever your greatest strength, lean in there. Your confidence will spread out.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, there actually have been some questions about more of the tactical, like what are the things? And I love that you say, do what you know lean into what you know,
Yeah.
build on the strengths that you already have. If it's in alignment with where you want to go, why not? No need to do anything new or recreate a mold. Absolutely. Jeff, how about for you? What was something that really fueled you during that time of the previous economic crisis? Oh, wait, are we on mute still? I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, what kept me going and didn't allow me to focus on fears or get caught up in things is I had this vision, and I felt what I felt with coaching, like kind of where I left off last time. And I moved, and I didn't stop, and I moved voraciously forward. And when you move voraciously forward with really no thought, and I'm saying like no thought or plan necessarily, like I really didn't have a plan. I was just going, and you start to create something when you go. And whatever I was creating, I was learning from and dealing with, and some things worked, some things didn't. And I hired a mentor, and second year in, things like that. And that momentum that was created kept me going. And yes, so then 2004, 2008 hits, economic downturn, things like that over the next 2 years. But did it matter? Like, no. Does it matter today? Like, it might feel like it when you're in it, but it doesn't matter. The opportunity today is no different than tomorrow, a year from now, or a year earlier. It's the opportunity that's in front of you. You'll seize it if you're there. If you're not there, you're not going to seize it. It doesn't matter what's happening with the economy or anything else. And I liken it to what I learned in college, and I took a 1-credit mountain bike course. Best class I ever took. And the instructor said, listen, guys and girls, he said, I'm going to teach you 2 things. If you go fast enough, you can go over anything. And brakes just slow you down. And I apply that now, same thing. Like, and everyone here has ridden a bike. I don't care if you've mountain biked before. You don't have to get this. But if you ever have mountain bike, whatever, you can imagine if you're riding a bike and you're in the forest and there's like rocks and roots and things like that. If you're going really slow, slow enough, every rock, every root is going to like disturb you, and you're going to focus on them, and you're going to stop, or you're going to fall, or you're not going to think you're going to be able to do it. If you're going fast enough, you're not going to even know it's there. You're not even going to see half the stuff. You're going to fly over it, and you're just going to end up on the other side. And are you going to fall and hurt yourself sometimes? Absolutely. I got scars to show it. I used to race mountain bikes. You know what I mean? I have stories where I've flown over my handlebars, but whatever. I got up, I healed, and I moved.
Sounds way more fun
yes.
than going super slow.
And it does sound more fun. And really, that's with business as well. Like, brakes just slow you down. Like, when you think, it slows you down. And so I liken that to that, what I learned, in whatever that was in 97, in my mountain bike course. And so I didn't have time to overthink things. I didn't have the space to go like, oh, is this the right move or not? Like, I did the move, and I would be like, yeah, that didn't really work. I don't do that again. Mm-hmm. Or like, wow, that was really good. Let me do that again, or let me get better at it.
Yeah, love that. I love hearing about your full body, just like knowing and moving and really bypassing the fears and the thinking that was going to hold you back. Yeah.
Knowing what I wanted, in the sense of, I didn't really know what that was though, but the biggest piece is the trust. I trusted myself. I don't know why. I just did. I trusted that, like, whatever I felt, that I would manifest something. I would create something from it. And mixed with a little naivete and a little ignorance, which I actually think is better, because if I knew all I knew now, I wouldn't do it over again. And I say that with respect, right? Probably with any process, but I think a little naivety and a little bit of ignorance is healthy sometimes when you're just going after it. But then having some of the education that we provide, obviously, and having that combined, like I said, when I hired a mentor and things like that, it's like, oh, I know when I took the mountain bike course, I didn't have to fall as hard anymore and hurt myself as much. I was still going to fall though. I just knew how to fall, or I just,
Right. Absolutely. Love that. Thanks, Jeff. Cindy, how about for you? What was really fueling you at that time?
Well, one thing I just want to acknowledge right now is I noticed for myself and everyone else here on screen is like doing a lot of head nodding. I think we're relating a lot to each other. Right? And what Jeff said and Luke said, like, it's all resonating with me. And I remember once reading in a Jack Canfield book, the expression, think like a squirrel, which really goes to the heart of what Jeff is saying. And when you think about a squirrel that's like running between two telephone poles and it just runs. If it was us as human beings up there, we'd be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get across there? Okay, I could do it this way, I could do it that way. And we never get across the wire. And think like a squirrel is just go, baby, go. And isn't it amazing to watch those squirrels and you wonder, how is it they don't fall off the wire? I've yet to see that happen. And that was such a valuable lesson for me because this, and I see this so much with people I work with, is they get in their own way, right? We all do this. We get in our own way. When you think like a squirrel, you just go. And I agree, Jeff, with a little bit of ignorance and sprinkle in some naivete. It took me places. It really, really did. And so I also want to echo what Luke said, because this was part of my recipe also, was really leaning into those places where you know you have some real skill and talent and gifts, really. And so for me, really connecting with people is something that I love to do. It's really important to me. It just comes very naturally to me. So one of the things that I did is I started a networking group in Atlanta. And again, if you said, okay, Cindy, one day you are going to start a networking group, I would have said, what are you talking about? Really just bringing people together so that we could all have an opportunity to, well, obviously to network. And so there's something that's really, really important when you're networking, and that is to think about other people and not so much about yourself. And then just watch what happens as a result. So there's a term that's called net weaving. So I may not have, somebody, I may not be somebody that might be a client for you. I might not be a good fit for you as a client, but I might know somebody to bring your way. And so just always being in the space of how can I serve? How can I help other people? As opposed to what can you do for me? And really always coming from that place of serving. And so networking, net weaving, whatever you want to call it. And it was a starting place for me. And from that, my business took off like crazy. I started getting speaking engagements. Okay, that was when my knees really started to tremble too. It's like, oh my gosh, going out there and now really talking in a big way. And there are these moments, and they came time and time again, where I kept getting sort of smacked in the face with, Cindy, you have to get out of your own way. You must get out of your own way. And this connects into with what Luke said before. Everything that iPEC gave me in my training taught me how to get out of my own way. It also taught me why I was putting myself in my own way. And so really leaning into what I knew, what I had been trained, also just was me just really living my truth. And when you live your truth and you connect into that place inside of you, and it's, we talk about it in iPEC about, really leaning in and living into your potential, like not who you think you are. This is who we think we are, but this is who we really are, is up here. And when you come from that place, oh man, sky is the limit. And the more I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that, I was like, oh wow, it's amazing what can happen when I get out of my own way. It's just incredible. So also to Jeff's point is, and I keep reinforcing their points because what they reinforce is really exactly what I would say. Start somewhere. Don't wait for the perfect plan, the perfect this, the perfect that, because I don't even think perfection even exists. Start somewhere, because then you can zigzag all over the place and just, you can create momentum when you're moving. If you're sitting on the sidelines, always wondering, how am I going to get started? You'll be stagnant. You never will get started, and just, spend your life on the sidelines. So just start somewhere. That's all there is to do, is start somewhere.
Absolutely. I love hearing each of your stories. It's like you're playing the game of life, you know, and why not have some fun while you play and trust yourself without justification for why you need to trust yourself. Yeah.
Jenny, can I add one thing there? Because Cindy just,
Go for it.
Cindy, you just reconnected me to something that had brought up from a community event years ago. You talk about, kind of getting out of our own way. And I want to just take this one kind of additional step as well to consider, perspective to consider, is almost that we have a responsibility to not only get out of our own way, but kind of get over our stuff. And what I mean by that is that if you don't grow a successful coaching practice, if you do not take it into the organization that you want to see it thrive in, if you do not become a coach because of anything that is blocking you internally, the primary person that is going to suffer is actually not you. It's the person that you were meant to serve because of your background, because of what you've been through, because of what expertise and what quality and energy and consciousness you bring to somebody that you are meant to serve. That person is still waiting for you. And if we don't get out of our own way, if we stay stuck in our own stuff, they're the one who doesn't get the help that they need. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking to tap into any of that type of motivation, please just remember, this isn't just simply about you. This is about a whole lot of people that you are meant to serve that will not get the help that they need if you do not get over your own stuff.
Absolutely. Powerful, powerful stuff, you guys. Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, I'd love to pivot to you again. And you recently, one of the benefits that our iPEC coach community has is you offer a quick start program. And anyone who's in the program can enroll when they're through a certain amount of their training. And one of the live webinars that you did was around why now is an amazing time to level up your coaching business. And so I'd love for you to share any insights that came up from that with our group here today.
Yeah, interestingly enough, when I said why now, where I went with that was now is no, and I kind of alluded to this a little earlier, there's no reason why now is actually better than any other time. In other words, it's there's opportunity now versus there's going to be opportunity a year from now, whenever this is over and something else happens, or back in 2008 or anywhere in between. So I wanted people to see that, because they're seeing that all over the place, or we're seeing that, and all the marketers are like, "Now's the greatest time in the world,
right?
Get online," and it's just like whatever. Yeah, we get it, all right. But so wasn't 6 months ago, and so wasn't 8 years ago, whatever. So I didn't want people to see it like, oh, now is the time I have to do that, because the reality is well, what if you had started your business when Luke or Cindy or I did, or last year? Just because this is happening circumstantially, are you going to stop? Are you going to back down? Like, no, you're going to keep going. And so do you have to, maybe you have to work a little bit harder or do a little bit more to get the same result because of a situation or circumstance. Okay, so what? So I have to talk to 10 people before I get one client now, and before I had to talk to 5 before I get one. All right, so what? So I wanted people to see that, run your business as normal, no matter what's going on in the world. Run it as if whatever, the economy's up and down, doesn't matter. It only impacts you if you allow it to impact you. And yeah, is there opportunity that's created from this? Absolutely. But I don't want them to see that as like, it's almost like a stock market. A stock goes up. Oh my God, when am I going to get it? Oh, I missed it.
Right.
You didn't miss it. Like maybe wait till it goes back down again. Don't buy Amazon when it's $2,400. But the whole point is that you're not missing anything, but just get in and start.
Absolutely. Cindy or Luke, anything to add to that? Cindy, go ahead.
I'll add something. Just with Jeff saying "so what" reminds me about a principle that I heard, and I go to this time and time again. And some of you may have heard of it. It's called the SW principle, which is very straightforward. And it says some will, meaning some will work with you, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. So you just keep moving because someone's waiting. And it really goes to what Luke said before. We must get out of our own way so we can serve the people that we are meant to serve. And, the other point I want to make is if we listen to everyone outside of us, it's going to be very hard to move forward, right? Whether it's the media or friends or family. I gave him my example before, friends and family saying to me, are you just nuts in this day and time that you would give up your full-time, well-paying job to go out and do this? And if I listened to those voices, I would still be probably in that corporate space. and living a kind of life. I'm living a very, very different life because I'm listening to a very different voice inside of myself as well. So whose voice are you listening to? Are you listening to voices around you, or are you listening to yourself? And if you're listening to yourself, what is your voice telling you? And if it's anything other than I'm going for my purpose and my passion in this one and only life that I have, then I don't know, you may want to hire a coach. Just saying. I have a coach too, by the way. All great coaches.
We eat our own cooking.
We eat our own cooking. We don't just think, right. We eat our own cooking. That's right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. Luke, anything you want to add?
Just to build on what was said, you know, for what Jeff said, and I love the simplicity of just keep growing your business the way that you do. When times are difficult out there, what clients are looking for is some form of change and transition. When times are great, clients are looking for growth. Another word for growth is change and transition. And another word for change and transition is growth. It's the same thing, different words. They're always looking for that same thing. And at the end of the day, it actually speaks to what Cindy just brought up, which is what they're all ultimately looking for is to address that quiet inner voice that keeps speaking to them saying, you got something more than this. There's something more aligned. There's something waiting for you. There's something that you've wanted to do for so long that you haven't yet gone after, or you've held back on going that extra bit to go get. It's all about addressing that part of you. And the more that we tap into that through coaching, through pursuing our path, that's what we're after. And that's what our clients are after.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to round out things with a final question for you guys, and then you can offer any other insights that you want to share before we wrap up. There are several who are asking, about this idea of networking, net weaving, sharing. And I'd love to give these final thoughts around how each of us as unique individuals and unique coaches leaning into this more professional mindset, being paid, calling ourselves coaches, sharing our gifts for others. What is it about each of our uniqueness that we need to be bringing forward into the way that we share ourselves as coaches? Luke, go for it.
Sure. I think, it's interesting, and I'll connect it to the net weaving and networking concept for a moment, because this was something I can only identify looking backwards at. Mm-hmm. The approach that Cindy described was absolutely fundamental for me being successful as an entrepreneur, first as a consultant, then as a coach before I joined iPEC, was looking at networking from that standpoint of being a connector and helping people to meet the relationships that they wanted to connect to. But what enabled that is in bringing out one unique aspect of myself that I didn't know was actually there. And the reason why, and most people wouldn't believe this today, is that I'm a wallflower, exactly what Cindy described. The idea of getting up and speaking or being at the front of this webinar or having spoken in front of some of the crowds that I have would have been beyond terrifying to me, 17, 18, 19 years ago, whatever it was. But what I found through networking, because it was such a great way to expand past some of those comfort zone issues that I had, was a great way to do it. But what I found was the reason why I was able to begin being a giver to those people inside of the network and connecting them with other relationships that would benefit them was that I have a unique way of being extremely, extremely present with whomever I am with. And so that allows me to get to know who they really are, to sense what they're kind of feeling and what they might be struggling with and what they're really, truly after, and have just a deeper conversation with them. And so I actually took this larger venue of networking, and I would just focus on maybe building one or two relationships in a given meeting or over a given month even. And that allowed me to be very personal, even a bit intimate with the people I would connect with, helping them in just wonderful ways because I'd now understood what they were after so much more. And that always came back around within actually a lot quicker time frame than I ever would have imagined. But it was that just, being extremely present. It was a unique gift that I wouldn't have known. I can only see it now.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. And that's definitely resonating with some of our attendees here today. that's one of your superpowers that you were able to tap into to be authentically yourself while you're actually becoming a coach and sharing yourself. Jeff, what's your perspective on bringing your uniqueness into the way that you share your coaching?
I think part of it is understanding that uniqueness, right? Is you might not understand it right away. And just like you might not understand the value that you're bringing to the market as a coach, our niche, if you will, right? So we want to understand that right away. And so I feel like a lot of us start off in that standpoint. So to be able to start to understand that as we get our message out there more, and as we interact with more people, I feel it's starting to understand that uniqueness. And I'm taking that approach because some people, maybe like Luke or someone like that, someone knows their unique standpoint. So if you know it, great. I think like Luke said, lean into it. Just like iPEC said, lean into it. So if you know it, great, lean into it. And the more you lean into that and bring that forward, that ups your value. And if you know it and people see it, that's why they'll hire you as well. But if you're not sure of it, I'm taking this path because I would imagine most people, that's where I was. I didn't know my value. Like it's just this coaching thing, and I'm supposed to ask open-ended questions, and a closed-ended questions may be bad. I don't know. And I remember, oh no, and we're in this logical state, and we want to be great, but we can't be great in this logical state. So, and how am I unique? So that's where, as we start to, if we're willing enough to get out there and just start moving, while you do that, make sure you ask, what was it that you liked about what I said or what I wrote? Why did you end up hiring me? What was the value in today's call? Seek to understand your value and lean into that over time and allow that to show up more, because when you understand, I'll say this, why people buy, like Luke always focused on energy, right? Talk about the selling skill set, right? And so there's the why people buy, you understand your value. And when you begin to understand your value in the market, and that's when you become dangerous in a good way. You become dangerous because you consciously understand why people buy, why people hire you. So you can do that more on demand, and you can do it more on demand authentically. It's not manufactured. Where it's like sometimes when we start off, we're trying. Like I'm trying to be a good coach, and that's okay. There's a process we all go through. Once you find that, and you find that through other people, it reinforces it, and then lean into it and know it.
Love that. Absolutely. I feed forward loops instead of feedback loops, because it really just helps to propel you forward as you continue to check in with that. Great. Thanks, Jeff. All right, Cindy, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say dovetailing with that is simply be who you are, right? Be who you are. Don't be afraid to bring what makes you you anywhere and everywhere you go, because if you don't, then there's some inauthenticity about you that's being expressed. Simply be who you are. Your quirks, your sense of humor, your sense of being relaxed, your sense of whatever, whoever you are, just really don't be afraid to bring that with you wherever you go, because when you just can relax into who you are, that's what will draw people in. They may not even be able to understand what you do, but people will be drawn to you because of who you are, and they want what you have. And so that's, we say in iPEC's training, you are a once in all history creation. Like there will never be another you. So even this whole idea about competing against other people, nobody else is in the game of being you. So all there is to do is to embrace who you are, and to just share your gifts, and to bring that into the world of coaching, into the way you communicate, into everything that you do. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to just really be yourself. And one other thing I want to add is, when you talk about what you do, don't come from this place of something that you memorize. Really come from this place, and maybe, my contribution here perhaps may be coming full circle. When it comes from here, it's coming from a place of passion. It's not something that's academic, but it's something that comes from a soul level in terms of, who you are and how it is that you help people.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we have spent a magical hour together. Thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing so authentically all of your stories. And I want to remind everyone that Even though you see us up on screen and have seen the full picture, we recognize that you have a story and a full picture also. And it's just as varied and beautiful and makes sense when you look back on it. So really tap into that superpower for yourself as you continue to move forward. We have some links if you want to connect and learn more about our panelists. Cindy and Jeff have their own websites, and we have iPEC Coaching's website for Luke. Thank you all so much for joining us for this special International Coaching Week webinar. I'd love to challenge everyone to sometime this week pay it forward, something that you've learned today. In some way, pay it forward to someone else. Really tap into that helper energy for yourself. There's some questions that are still outstanding. So if you're in our coach community, we have a watch party set up, and go ahead and add those questions into the private Facebook group that we have. We can continue the conversation there. And if you're not yet an iPEC certified coach, you are welcome to continue the conversation on our Facebook page. Jordan will be posting the link in the comments. Or if you are ready to start your journey as a certified coach, we have our admissions coaches who are available to talk with you about that. Thanks again to everyone. Thank you to our amazing panelists, Cindy, Luke, and Jeff. It has been a pleasure sharing this space with you today. And we will see you all in virtual land until we can all be in person again. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.